Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for being here and watching this meeting. So we'll just have a few moments until it's 9. Current time, 8:53. But thank you guys. Hope you had a great weekend and are doing well. And we'll just have our lecture lined up here in just a few. Hey, Eva. How's it going? Eddie. And hey there, Megan. Good morning. Eddie. Cats are just running around down here, so it's kind of what's distracting me when I'm looking down. Yeah, it is. Finally, we get a little bit of the regular fall seasonal weather, I guess. But it's nice to have the change up. Eddie, you're going to knock something over. I'm not sure. Good morning. Hey there, Senna. Anybody watching, feel free to say hi. I guess there's just a few of us for now. Welcome back. Okay, just a couple minutes. almost good to go. Just another minute and a half, pretty much. Hey, Anthony, there. How's it going? Kelly, good to see you. Good morning. Peach? Hey, Lucy. Good to see you too. Okay, guys. Well, it's basically class time. Got a few seconds. So, good morning again. Welcome back, everybody. It's Monday, October the 26th, and we're getting in our Monday meeting for Intro to Philosophy. So, welcome back. Hope you guys had a great weekend. And the course just keeps moving along. We're just following the calendar of dates from the syllabus. Today we're going to lecture on the work of Descartes, and that's going to kind of finalize this current topic of the semester, which is epistemology and the theory of knowledge. So we just have another meeting devoted to that material on the work of Descartes, and then we'll start to roll into the next topic that follows after that on Wednesday, which is time and the metaphysics of time. So let's just get into it. I'm working through your guys' midterms that you did the previous Friday. They'll be done for sure this week, no later than Friday. I'm going to try to get them done prior to that, but I have a few other grading tasks, so I'm making sure to get everything done in the right order. But not to worry, you'll be notified and you can check on your grade for the midterm, or if you never asked about the first essay, of course, that's been graded and you can ask about both of them. But I'll send out the notice in a couple days when I'm finished with the last few of them. Okay, so just some random updates. And then just a little recap to get us back into the concepts that we're thinking of right now. Last week, we started on epistemology. We started by looking at the ancient Greek classical definition of knowledge. We briefly discussed the historical facts concerning Socrates' life and death. And anyway, Plato, his main disciple and student, wrote all these dialogues, including the Meno, where Socrates discusses knowledge. In the dialogue called the Meno, Socrates basically states and argues, defends the claim that knowledge is justified true belief, meaning that in order for you to know something, you have to have a belief, meaning you think something's true. Second, it actually has to be true, so you have to be getting it correct. And then you have to have some justification for it, meaning having reasons or evidence to support the belief. And Socrates thought that knowledge was prized and valued more than just having a correct opinion, where correct opinion just means true belief but without justification. It's better to have knowledge than a mere correct opinion, because the additional element of justification prevents the knowledge, the true belief that's based on evidence, from leaving your mind. So justification has a function, he claims, somewhat similar to the function of ropes when they locked down these Daedalus statues. Those were very beautiful, well-known statues by this famous sculptor that the legend said would run away if you didn't fasten them to the ground with ropes. So in the same way, when you have a true belief, you want to keep that locked down in your belief system so that it doesn't leave, and it'll remain with you if it's justified and based on evidence. Okay, and then there was Gettier. Edmund Gettier showed us 2,000 years after that actually there are problems with this classical Greek definition of knowledge. So famously, Gettier, provides these cases, Gettier cases, examples. And in the examples, we see a certain individual who would have a justified true belief, yes, but not have knowledge. And that shows that the definition given by the Greeks is somehow not fully complete. In the case given by Gettier, just a recap of the main case, Gettier, case 1, Um, we have two people running for a job. There's Smith and Jones. At the end of the day, after the interview, Smith believes that Jones will get the job and that Jones has 10 coins in his pocket. And he believes those things because, first of all, the boss told him that Jones would get the job. And he counted the coins in Jones' pocket, and there were 10 when he counted them. So using those pieces of information, he formed this belief that Jones gets job and Jones has 10 coins in his pocket. He then uses deduction to infer that, well, the man who gets the job has 10 coins in his pocket. And since that is entailed by the first proposition, he's thus justified in believing it as well. So he's justified then in basically believing that the man who gets the job has 10 coins in his pocket. But in the end, the plot twist, is that the boss says, never mind, actually I was kidding. Smith, for real, you're getting the job, not Jones, like I said before. So Smith actually surprisingly gets it, despite what the boss had previously said, and it also is just a coincidence, but true, that Smith also has 10 coins in his pocket, but he did not, he was not aware of that. So all along, the proposition that the man who gets the job has 10 coins in his pocket was true. Smith believed it. He had reason to believe it, so he was justified. But it's not something that he really can claim to know. After all, the reasons that it was true have nothing to do with his basis for believing it. So that's a case of a justified true belief that isn't knowledge. And then there are other cases that spin off from that. I didn't get to talk to you guys about the second Gettier example, but I did share a video for you guys, so maybe some of you got a chance to look at it. I'm just going to very briefly zoom through the essence of that second case, just so I mentioned it to you once. But in the other case, you have Smith and Jones working in the same office. Smith believes that Jones owns a Ford because he shows up to work driving a Ford, and he just tells everybody, this is my car and I'm a Ford man and that's all I drive. So he believes that Jones owns a Ford, and then he just randomly decides to form three more beliefs based on that, which are all disjunctions, in other words, or statements. So either Jones owns a Ford or this unknown whereabouts of his other friend Brown. His friend Brown, he doesn't know where in the world he is, but he believes that Jones owns a Ford, so he thinks he can safely disjoin to that any other statement. So either Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in Boston. Either Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in Barcelona. Either Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in some European city called Brest-Litovsk. Okay. Now, in the end, what happened was Jones did not own a Ford, actually. Despite all appearances, he was driving a rental and lying about it being his. So although it looked like it and people were justified in believing so, it wasn't really true that Jones owns a Ford. But Brown, the other person, just randomly happens to be in Barcelona. So the second believed disjunction, that either Jones owns a Ford or Brown is in Barcelona, happens to be true. It's justified for Smith to believe it based on the evidence which made it appear that Jones owns the Ford, but it's not something that he knows because the disjunct that makes it true, that Brown is in Barcelona, is something that Smith had no information to suggest was true. Okay, and then we also discussed other Gettier cases like the hallucination elephant, the fake barn. I told you a case of me finding my car in a parking lot, having formed a justified true belief that it was in the particular aisle that it was in, even though I was only led to that belief by seeing a different car that looked like it. So anyway, these are all various examples in the same genre of Gettiers where there's a justified true belief but no knowledge. So what is knowledge then? If it's not justified true belief, what's the right definition? And we're just not sure. Okay, so now one last author on epistemology, and this is coming from the great French philosopher René Descartes. So Descartes was a French philosopher of the early modern period. He lived from let me get the writing correctly. He lived from 1596 until 1650. And in 1641, he wrote an important book, which is called The Meditations. Okay, so often scholars and philosophers refer to this book as The Meditations, but its full title is a little longer. It's Meditations on First Philosophy, but I'll just usually use the shortened, abbreviated title as shorthand for us, The Meditations by Descartes, classic book from 1641. Now, Descartes is one of the most famous philosophers in Western history, another one of the big names. He did important work in philosophy, but also in some other academic fields. He was also a mathematician and a person who did geometry. If you've ever studied geometry and you learned about the coordinate plane and the Cartesian coordinates, that's given the namesake of Descartes, Cartesian, because he's one of the people who helped develop that whole field. So he's definitely a large and well-respected figure in the Academy of the West, but this book, Meditations, is probably what he's well known for the most. And his writing style is, I think, fun to read in a way. It's quite clear and expressive, almost literary. Sometimes that's a bit of a departure from the dry and abstruse work of some philosophers anyway. Now, let me tell you about the goal of his book that he wrote, okay? Because he had a project in mind and a goal in mind when he wrote this book. So let's think of the time period in history. This is the 1600s. It's closely following on the Renaissance period in Europe. And there's now this big explosion of knowledge that's rapidly advancing in all these different fields in the academy. So we're starting to, for example, learn about the planetary orbits and that we rotate around the sun because more advanced telescopes are being invented. So we're gaining a greater sense of the scope and the scale of the cosmos. We're also starting to learn that the most fundamental unit of living matter is the cell. We're starting to develop new advances in mathematics because calculus is being invented by Leibniz and Newton's laws of physics have just been developed. More realistic artistic techniques are now allowing artists to more accurately depict three-dimensional objects by having a vanishing point in the painting. So there's basically, in medicine, in anatomy, you name it, there's just big, rapid advances happening across all these different academic and intellectual disciplines. And, well, Descartes says, if we're going to now embark on this journey in the West of building up all this amazing scientific and other knowledge, then let's make sure that we set that body of knowledge on a firm foundation. Basically, Descartes was worried about the following thing. He said, sometimes when you're young, for example, like a little child, you believe things that you really probably shouldn't believe, but it's only because you're so young and you're not yet experienced enough to judge things. So, little kids will believe things. Later on, they become older and they recognize, oh, how silly and foolish it was when I was a child that I really thought that that was true. So what Descartes is saying is that he doesn't want the same type of experience to happen with Western knowledge and science. We don't want to have to later on come back to our initial assumptions and say, everything we thought we knew, we have to just throw it out because it was based on incorrect assumptions at the foundation. So he basically thinks that we have to place a very solid, unshakable, firm foundation underneath our body of scientific knowledge. If you use a metaphor of architecture, think of it like this. Even if you have a very beautiful, ornate, towering structure, if it's built on a loose foundation of shaky quicksand or whatever, then no matter how amazing it may look, it's bound to collapse because of the weak foundations. So he says we need a rock-solid foundation to set the foundations of our expanding body of knowledge. So he wants to place underneath science and other academic knowledge the most total certainty that there could be. So he's on a search, therefore, in this book. The whole book is about a quest for what is certain. What is certain? What is totally certain? So much so that we could never doubt it. And whenever we find out what that certain stuff is, then that will be like this bedrock that everything else is founded upon. Okay, so that's the goal of this book. Here is what he says as he opens the page to his writing. First paragraph, he says, "Some years ago I was struck by the large number of falsehoods that I had accepted as true in my childhood and by the highly doubtful nature of the whole structure that I had therefore based on them. I realized that it was necessary once in the course of my life to demolish everything completely and start right again from the foundations if I wanted to establish anything at all in the sciences that was stable and likely to last. But the task looked enormous, and I began to wait until I should reach a mature enough age to ensure that no subsequent time of life would be more suitable for tackling such an inquiry. This led me to put the project off for so long that I would now be to blame if by pondering over it any further I wasted the time still left for carrying it out. So today I have expressly rid my mind of all worries and arranged for myself a clear stretch of free time. I'm here quite alone, and at last I will devote myself sincerely and without reservation to the general demolition of my opinions. So the goal, the mission is to try and find out what is certain, and Descartes now suggests to you, here's how we can find out what that certainty is that will give us our foundations we're looking for. He says, in order to discover what is really certain, you have to use what is called the method of doubt. Okay, so the method that he suggests to discover what is certain is the method of doubt. Okay, so Descartes' famous method of doubt, what it says is this. It says that if something could be doubted, if there's even any possible remote possibility, even if it's the most unlikely possibility, but even if there's a slight little iota of possibility that something could be false, if it could be doubted, then let us assume that it is false, completely false, and move on to the next and on to the next until we find something that cannot be doubted like that. So the method of doubt essentially says that if anything could be doubted, assume that it's false. Assume to be false anything and everything that could even possibly be doubted. Okay. All right, assume to be false anything that can even possibly be doubted. So it's kind of like a method of finding certainty by means of a process of elimination, kind of. What you're doing in this case is going through the beliefs that you have, and if there's even a tiny, tiny non-zero chance that it could be false, then that's not certain enough. And let us assume then that that is false completely, set it to the side, and keep going through the beliefs in our belief system until we find something that has no potential to be false, and then we will have found by this process, through the method of doubt, whatever remains uneliminated through this process is the certainty. When I was a student back in college over at UCLA, I had a good instructor on this material, and he offered this as like a metaphor to explain the method of doubt a little bit. I don't know if it's a perfect metaphor, but it worked for me, so I'll just pass it on down to you. He said, imagine if somebody was out at the store or whatever, and they were trying to purchase like a really nice, perfect, ideal specimen of an apple, like from the produce section. I don't know why the person wants an apple. Maybe they're going to give it as a gift to one of their teachers, like in the old days. But at any rate, they're looking for this perfect apple, right? So they're looking in the cart, and the person pulls one out, and they see this apple. They're like, oh, this looks like it's a great one. This will be the one. But as they turn it over and inspect it a little more, they see, it's not quite ideal. There's this one little bruise on it, one little blemish. Therefore, this is not the ideal specimen. I move it to the side, and I keep going through the same barrel until I find that one unblemished, perfect case of an apple. So in the case of the method of doubt, we're not going through apples in a barrel, but we are sorting through the beliefs in your mind, in your belief system. And the equivalent thing is exposing it to the light of doubt and scrutiny. And if there's any possible way that it could be doubtful, then that is not certain enough. That belief gets dismissed as false, and we continue in the same way unless and until we do find something, hopefully, that can't not be doubted. And then we've identified it, aha, eureka, that's the thing that can't be doubted, and it founds all the other things above it in the system. Okay, well, once this method of doubt is being used, once we are doing the so-called meditation, which is what he invites the reader to do, he says, play along, apply the method of doubt while you're reading this text. If we use the method of doubt, there's a lot of beliefs that do have reasons to be doubted and are therefore disregarded as false. So let's go over what can be doubted according to the method of doubt. Okay, so right away he says the method of doubt eliminates a very basic source of belief that we all have, and that is every belief that comes on the basis of sense perception. So what can be doubted according to the method of doubt? All beliefs that are based on sense perception can be doubted. Okay, so let's talk about that for a moment. What is sense perception? So we've got these 5 senses, right? And there's sight, taste, touch, vision, and hearing. Those are the familiar 5 senses that give us information about our environment, about the world around us. Imagine how much less knowledge you would have about your current circumstances or what's happening if you didn't have the 5 senses. If you couldn't see, taste, touch, hear, or smell, if you had no sensations, you'd really be at a loss, right, about anything almost. So we use our sense perception to gain all kinds of beliefs and information about what's going on. Like, I don't know, if I see my cat over here, then I have the belief that she's, on the carpet or in the kitchen. That comes from my vision. Right now, I can feel like the physical sensation of this table against my arm. So the tactile quality of the chair that I'm sitting in and the table here, it just informs me that I'm giving this lecture. When you listen and you hear like a siren blaring as it's driving past, the hearing of it tells you that there's some ambulance driving around the neighborhood. So obviously I don't really need to tell you this. You all know, and you're intimately aware and familiar from all experiences that you have, that sense perception is a main source of information about reality around you, right? But what he's telling you, what Descartes is saying, is that everything that you believe from your 5 senses, all of it completely can be doubted, okay? Now that's, in a way, a difficult concept for you to think about at first, but we have to go there because we're studying this man. So what is it you think that could make it possible for your sense perception to be incorrect? Like, what do you think would have to be happening for you to be wrong right now that you're watching this lecture on YouTube? Because I know you believe you're doing that. I know you believe you're sitting somewhere, wherever you're at, your room or something, or your house, and you think you're watching a lecture on a computer or a phone if you're using one, whatever device, you think you're watching a lecture. But how could that be wrong? How could you be mistaken about that? What's the possible way that that could be doubted? Let's see if you have any thought on this, because it's exactly what Descartes says next. So who can give me a suggestion? What could be the possible way in which you would be wrong at this moment about what's happening physically or through your perception? How could you be wrong? Sometimes people doubt their sense perception because of the possibility of like optical illusions. Sure, like, you think you see a body of water way out in the distance when you're in some hot area and it's actually just a mirage. We all have heard about optical illusions, but I'm going a stage further. How do you think it could be that right now you're wrong about even being in your room and even having the computer that you think you're watching this on? How could that be incorrect? Let me know. You got to have some idea on that. Okay, Anthony, that you're dreaming. Hallucination would be another case. But I was going more in the direction of dreaming, actually. So yeah, Anthony, because let's go over the topic of what is a dream. Well, when you're having dreams, you guys have all had dreams, right? If you have a dream, when you're in the midst of the dream, you think that what's happening is just actually real. And we've all, I'm sure, had those kinds of realistic dreams where, you're almost, you're tricked and fooled during the midst of it that it's happening. That happens to me, regularly sometimes. I don't know. Sometimes I seem to only remember the less pleasant dreams, but I've had dreams like where I'll be in front of a classroom, like we're back, physical campus, and I'm trying to teach a lesson, but in a dream, you know how it is, you start to lose your train of thought and your ability to express things and even read notes kind of gets all warped because it's a dream world. And so in a dream I'm trying to teach a lesson to students just like I'm doing right now, but I start losing the plot and I have a hard time like getting back on track in the lesson. And then I wake up from the dream and I realize, yes, okay, I get a second chance to actually have a lecture because it wasn't really going so well in the nightmare that I was having. Or even worse situations. I'll be driving along in a dream and oops, I took a wrong turn. Now I'm like flying off a cliff, scared as hell, preparing myself to actually die. And then I wake up and I'm like, okay, I'm glad that that was just not real. So, you know, whether it's pleasant, whether it's unpleasant, I'm sure you guys, each and every one of you has at least had one dream in your life where, you know, you thought it was really happening. So since we can have realistic dreams, you can't necessarily, according to Descartes, rule out the possibility that right now you're dreaming and that this is a realistic dream. You know, you think that this is a real event, that you're not sleeping. But he says there's no criteria that you can check that against to verify that it's true. If your whole life has been a dream, for example, and you've never had a waking experience yet, then you wouldn't have anything by which to compare the nature of your current experience with to verify or to establish that it's just a dream. So, you know, this whole possibility that we're indulging in, that everything about reality is just a big dream that you're having, it's a sort of theme that's been explored in the plot line of different films and literature over the years. Like, you know, it was all a dream or it was all an illusion kind of scenario. We see that in like The Matrix, if you guys know about that, where they spend a lot of time in the film in this entirely false reality that's generated by like computers that program it into the people that are in the Matrix. There's the concept of we're living in a computer simulation and, you know, we're sort of, there's like super intelligent beings that have programmed us and we're just aspects of a simulation. This isn't reality. So, you know, or like it was all a dream, like Inception type movie plot lines. Well, those all can be traced back to the skeptical scenarios posited by Descartes and others. So you understand me? Like, I know you believe that you're wide awake and you have, you know, no normal reason to doubt that. But as we're now entertaining the method of doubt, that is one of the things that cannot be established with perfect total certainty. So everything from sense perception, meaning we're going to assume is false, actually. So here's like the argument structure that he's giving to you right here. It has these two premises leading to this conclusion below. So the first premise just saying to know anything from sense perception, I must first know that I'm not dreaming. So what it says is, to know anything from sense perception, I must know that I'm not dreaming. But the second premise just continues by stating that, but there is no way to know I'm not dreaming. So from these two premises, the logical conclusion that follows is that therefore, I don't know anything from sense perception. Okay, so just the makings of a basic argument here as we go farther in this process of exploring the method of doubt and what it might imply. So like taking stock of where we are at right now. Descartes' book, The Meditations, has this goal, and the goal is try and find out what's certain. If we can find out what's certain, we need that because that's the kind of thing that should be the foundation of all other knowledge. If we cannot discover something certain, then what's the point of building up all the other knowledge? I mean, if we were living in like a simulation, for example, who would care about scientific knowledge about a simulation because it's not even knowledge of something real, right? Like would Mario and Mario Brothers have any reason to analyze the physical properties of like the mushrooms and flowers that he's eating in those games? Because none of it's real. So if this is a simulation, then there's no real point to building up knowledge about it. Or if this was a dream, same. So anyway, we got to find some certainty to make sure that everything else that's founded from that base is knowledge, is real knowledge. And where the method of doubt kicks in, it tells you to assume to be false anything that can be doubted and see if anything's left over after that. But one mainstream source of belief and we presume knowledge gets eliminated right away, and that's everything that comes from sense perception, because as you can see here, there's at least some within the realm of possibility doubt for even, your sense perception, which ordinarily you just don't have much doubt about. Okay, so if you're dreaming, then maybe all your beliefs about the external world are false, including like even you think you have this physical body or the appearance that you have. If you're dreaming, maybe none of that is true. Maybe you don't even have a physical body as you think you do, and you've just been dreaming it and having an illusion of such. Here, I'll read you what he says. He says, whatever I have acquired up till now is most true. I've accepted from either the senses or through the senses. But from time to time, I have found that the senses deceive, and it's prudent never to trust completely those that have deceived us even once. Now, he sometimes goes in this kind of like dialectical manner as he writes. Like he sometimes poses critical questions to himself as though he's like interrogating himself or cross-examining himself. It's just kind of like a witty intellectual tactic of writing, but sometimes he'll give a point and then he'll allow himself to speak in the voice of his critic, like giving a rebuttal. And so sometimes it sounds kind of like he's playing devil's advocate against his own ideas. And then he says this. He says, but although the senses occasionally deceive us with respect to objects which are very small or in the distance, there are many other beliefs about which doubt is quite impossible, even though they are derived from the senses. For example, that I am here, sitting by the fire, wearing a winter dressing gown, holding a piece of paper in my hands, and so forth. How could it be denied that these hands or this whole body are mine, unless I were to liken myself to a madman? But then he says, a brilliant piece of reasoning, as if I were not a man who sleeps at night, and regularly has all the same experiences while asleep that madmen do when awake. Indeed, sometimes even more improbable ones. How often asleep at night am I convinced of just such familiar things, that I'm in a dressing gown sitting by the fire, when in fact I'm lying undressed in bed. Yet at the moment my eyes are certainly wide awake. When I look at this piece of paper, I shake my head and it's not asleep. As I stretch and feel my hand, I do it deliberately and I know what I'm doing. This wouldn't happen with such distinctness to someone asleep. Ah, indeed, as if I did not remember other occasions when I have been tricked about some exactly similar thoughts while asleep. As I think about this more carefully, I see plainly that there are never any sure signs by means of being awake can be distinguished from being asleep. Okay, so we've gotten the first major claim analyzed in his essay here, which is that using the method of doubt, which is a tactic given to discover what's certain, all the beliefs from sense perception are eliminated. So we're still searching then. What is it that's certain? It's not going to be found in the realm of sense perception, sight, taste, touch, hearing, and smell. So what's another source, perhaps, of more certainty? Well, next afterwards, that part, he discusses maybe there's more certainty in the realm of, stuff that doesn't have to do with sense perception, like just pure formal technical knowledge of abstract things like math, like logic. So you might argue that 2 + 2 is 4, like a mathematical truth. That is even more certain than, I'm in my kitchen right now. Because you could be dreaming about the things that you think you're perceiving with your 5 senses. But you could argue that whether you're awake or whether you're asleep, 2 + 2 just still equals 4. There are still 4 sides on a square. There's still 3 sides on a triangle. So you might argue that like stuff that has no connection to like space and time, just purely abstract formal concepts like of number, of shape, that those things would always remain true no matter whether the world provided by your senses was factually true or not. So do we find the real truth that's absolutely certain in like mathematics, logic, and geometry? That's the second suggestion. But as good as that sounds, Descartes, still says, no, actually not. That's not going to work either. There's still some possible doubt, even about mathematics and logic and geometry. And now, how does he say that that could be doubted? Now, this is a little weird, but I'll just explain it to you. He says, so when you do a mathematical sum that's really elementary, like 9 times 9 is 81, or 9 plus 9 is 18, when you get the correct result, you think that's 100% certain. Like 5 plus 5 equals 10. I'm not guessing when I say that. I'm not like saying, well, that's possible. I'm saying that's absolutely true, and there's no way that could be otherwise. But he says there's one thing that if he really wanted to, he could manipulate your beliefs about that and make them so they're not correct. And what he's talking about is Almighty God. Okay, so Descartes, as well as pretty much every literate person publishing in the academy back in the late Renaissance of Europe would be a Christian. And so he says, since I believe in God and God is omnipotent and he can do anything, it's within his power, if he chooses, to make it so that when I think I'm doing like a correct math problem or whatever, that I'm actually not doing it that way. So God, if he wanted to, could make it so that even when I think I have total certainty about something mathematical, geometrical, or just logical, that there I'm still incorrect, because God can do anything and he could manipulate my beliefs about those things. But having said that, okay, having suggested the possibility that mathematics and stuff could also be doubted due to the power of God, he reverses himself. He says, okay, well, God could do that. He could do that. But despite the fact that he could, he just wouldn't do that. Why do you think he suggests or says this? That God very well could cause you to get math and such wrong, but even though that's in his power, he will not choose to do it. Why do you think he proposes that God, although he can make this happen, that you're getting math and such wrong, although he can do it, he won't do it? Why do you think that he says that's something that God just would not choose to do, although he could? Let's see. Any idea here? Why won't God mess with your 2 + 2 is 4 stuff, even though he can? What is it about God that you think he's thinking of here, which leads him to suggest that that's not something God would do to you or me or anybody? Why not? I think you can guess, or try to anyway. Right, well, we wouldn't know if anything is true, that's right, but why wouldn't God want that? Why wouldn't God just, say, hey, let me play with these people and make them think 2 + 2 is 4, but it's something else? Why wouldn't God do that? You're right, Anthony, that we wouldn't know any of the things that we think we know about math. But good, Christopher, it's because of the definition of God that everyone accepts, that he's perfect. And if he's omnibenevolent, that means he's perfectly good. But to create us and just set us up to fail, basically, set us up to get all our beliefs wrong, even when it seems most abundantly obvious to us, that's not nice, that's manipulative, that's deceptive, and it runs contrary to God's perfect goodness to be a deceiver like that. So he says, we could doubt the math and stuff if God wanted to do that, but he wouldn't do it. So I guess it's back to being known and certain, not so fast. Okay, so follow the back and forths. Descartes says, according to the method of doubt, anything doubtful we got to assume is false. Sense perception, all that could be false because you could be dreaming. What about math and so on? Seems like it's on more solid ground, but then he proposes that maybe God could mix up your beliefs about that even. Having stated that possibility, he withdraws it, saying although he could, he wouldn't, because as you say, Christopher, he's too good for that. He's too omnibenevolent to want to do that. But there could be a being that is not perfectly good, subordinate to God, therefore, but still somehow over and beyond our powers. So above us, but below God. If there were such a being as this, like, say, an evil demon, then it could be the power of the evil demon which causes this deception about math and geometry and so forth. So there you go. He says even that stuff still remains doubtful, not through the agency of God, who's perfectly good and not a deceiver, but maybe through the agency and action of something like an evil demon. So that's the way that even math and logic could be doubted. Even math and logic and geometry. Trigonometry, calculus, other formal just disciplines of those kinds can be doubted. Because of the possibility of an quote-unquote evil demon deceiving us about those things. Okay, so let me read on that and you'll hear how he says this. He says, it's on page 353. A reasonable conclusion might be that physics, astronomy, medicine, and all those disciplines which depend on the study of physical things are doubtful. But arithmetic, geometry, and subjects like that which deal only with the simplest and most general things, regardless of whether they really exist or not, contain something certain and not doubtful. Because whether I am awake or asleep, 2 and 3 added together are 5, and a square has no more than 4 sides. It seems impossible that such basic truths have any possibility of being false. But then he says, and yet firmly rooted in my mind is the long-standing belief that there is an omnipotent God who made me the kind of creature that I am. How do I know that he has not brought it about, that there is no earth, sky, extended things, shape, size, place, while at the same time ensuring that all these things appear to me to exist as they do now? Moreover, since I sometimes consider that others go astray in cases where they think they have perfect knowledge, may I not similarly go wrong every time I add 2 and 3 or count the sides of a square? But perhaps God would not have wished me to be deceived in this way, since he is said to be supremely good. And then he continues, so I will suppose, therefore, not that God, who is supremely good and the source of truth, but rather some malicious demon of the utmost power and cunning has employed all his energies in order to deceive me. I shall think that the sky, air, earth, color, shape, sound, and all external things are merely the delusions of dreams, which he has devised to ensnare my judgment. I shall consider myself as not having hands, eyes, flesh, or blood, or sense, but as falsely believing that I have all these things. And I will stubbornly and firmly persist in this meditation. And even if it is not in my power to know anything true, I will at least do what I can to resolutely guard against agreeing to anything false, so that the deceiver, however powerful they may be, will be unable to impose on me in the slightest degree. Okay, so that's where the first meditation ends. That's the first chapter of his book. Want to mention that. This is book, The Meditations. There are 6 chapters. Each one is called a different meditation, and they're numbered in order. So it's meditation 1, that's chapter 1. Meditation 2, meditation 3, 4, 5, and 6. So what we did just now is cover the whole first meditation, where he lays down the project goal, which is to discover certainty by using the method of doubt. And then as he begins pursuing this method, the first point he notices is that everything from sense perception is within the realm of doubt because of dreaming. And then he lays out that also even math, geometry, and logic and stuff, that can be doubted too, even though it initially seems more certain, because God, oh no, wait, not God, but maybe an evil demon could manipulate you about those things even. So now at the end of meditation 1, it's like we're kind of, if you're following the narrator, the meditator, you're sort of left in this black hole of concern about whether any knowledge will survive the method of doubt. Like, is the method of doubt just going to show us that nothing can really be known for sure and we're just going to permanently be having to doubt things? Well, at the beginning of meditation 2, it's kind of like one of those novella little cliffhangers. He ends meditation 1 like, what to do? Will I ever have any knowledge anymore? And then meditation 2 starts, and we start to slowly rehabilitate back up from basically ground zero to our ordinary conception of knowledge. But we have to first eliminate it all and then build from scratch. So in meditation 2, he starts to show us what actually can still be known for certain despite the method of doubt. So that's what I'm going to talk to you guys about now. So now we've reached meditation 2, and Descartes says, well, as much as the method of doubt can cause me to doubt everything from sense perception, everything I think I know about math and all of that, there's this one thing that survives the method of doubt that cannot possibly be doubted. There's this one and only thing that the method of doubt even cannot touch. So I wonder if you can guess what that thing could be. What is something that you cannot doubt, no matter what else you could doubt? There's one thing, and maybe only one thing, at least first, where it's like a contradiction to even doubt this. What do you think that could be? What's something that's absolutely certain? And by the way, this is a source of a famous quotable quote of Descartes that's kind of escaped out of his writing into the popular consciousness. So maybe that's a hint for you, but if you don't know that, I'll tell you about it anyway. But yeah, what do you think is something that, despite the heavy skepticism of the method of doubt, this thing remains totally certain? What do you think that could be? Anybody? I mean, what is something that no one could ever doubt? You got nothing for me? I think you'll get something. There's this one thing left over the method of doubt cannot eliminate. What could it be? What do you think? What's something that can't be doubted? You don't have to even read this book to know this. It's just common sense. Something that's not capable of being false. Still getting nothing, but maybe you're just thinking about it. Just let me know. Here, let's see what you say. Something that's got to be true. It wouldn't even make sense to say that this could be false. Are you just like, you're just lost? You're like, I don't know. I thought that it was just, the world exists, but now you're telling me I'm dreaming, so I don't know. Is that what you're thinking? Tell me what you're thinking if you can't give an answer. Because something's better than nothing, so that's what I'm saying. Let me just hear from you. I know there's only 15 of you, so maybe you're thinking with such a small group, pressure's on for me to talk, but there's not a lot of other people to take the responsibility off of you. Okay, Anthony, why are you lost though? What's something you can't doubt? What's something that you cannot doubt? Just try. Try something that you think is really obvious. It's all right. Go ahead. Just let me know. The sun comes up every day, but who knows? The sun and the whole universe might not exist. You're breathing, but you don't even know if you have lungs because, you might not even have a body. You might just be a gas floating somewhere, a soul or something, dreaming that you even have the lungs. Well, yeah, but that's a little bit too general, actually, Megan. It's a thing that is true, that is known, yes, but what is it in particular? You're getting this is good, though. This is good. I want this to happen. This failed attempt to give the right answer is better than nothing. So maybe not that you're breathing, but something a little more, maybe you're on the right track with that. Okay, good there. That you're conscious wherever you are. Right. So what's something that you can't doubt? That you exist, okay? Do you understand that? You cannot doubt your own existence. The existence of the first person that you are is something that you can't doubt. Anthony, you say that you feel emotions. Some people are kind of like robots, right? They just don't act like they feel too many emotions. Kind of got that like military kind of just do it and don't act like you feel anything. But more basically, just that you have consciousness itself, that you're thinking, feeling anything, whether it's an emotion, whether it's hunger, whether it's just seeing things. So, point being, one thing that you can't doubt is that you exist. That you exist. How come you can't doubt that you exist? How come it's like, in a way, self-contradictory to say, I'm not so sure if I exist or not? Why? Go through the thought process with me. How come it's not possible for anybody to coherently doubt their own existence? Why can't you doubt that you exist? Just tell me. It's because even thinking that you don't exist just shows what? We got to make sure this point is clear. So, but I want you to stimulate some of the information so that I'm not just telling you. What do you believe is the reason that it's illogical for someone to doubt that they exist? Because you wouldn't be able to think that you don't exist if you don't exist. Exactly, Anthony. The very act of questioning and contemplating anything, like, do I exist or not? Let me question this. Let me think about this. The very fact that you're thinking about it means that there's someone thinking, right? So even if everything around you is just a big dream, right? Suppose you're just living your life and it's a dream. Still, there's got to be a dreamer, right, who's having the dream. So even if everything that you perceive is false, even if your body doesn't exist even, there's some consciousness that you are, which is experiencing the illusion, if it is. So, good, Salster, cool. You can doubt the existence of others, but not yourself, since you even have the thought of existence. Exactly. So, despite the method of doubt, I know for certain that I exist as a thinking mind. So, like, even if the concept of my body is not real, because this is just something I'm dreaming of having, but it's not real, no matter what, it would still be 100% certain that I exist as some kind of consciousness. So I at least exist as a soul, if not a physical body, just on the very basis that I'm having these thoughts at all. Now, Whose existence is absolutely certain, guys? Whose? For example, do you know for certain, according to the method of doubt, that I, Professor Vulich, exist? Who is it that you know for sure exists, according to this so-called method of doubt? You know of the existence of just your own, exactly. And why is that, Senna? It's because you only have first-person access to your own consciousness. All the other minds out there, all your friends, relatives, other human beings on the planet, you only observe their consciousness as a third-person observer looking on the outside, looking in. So as far as you know, they could all just be characters that you're dreaming of in this simulation that you're a part of, right? So I guess from your perspective, relative to me, I'm something doubtful, but in your own consciousness, your existence is something that's ironclad and totally certain. Now, this is the basis of a famous quote of Descartes, and I was alluding to that earlier. Has anybody ever heard this quote? Let's see if you can finish it. I think, therefore something. Is this in the mind of any of you guys? Maybe it is, because it's a kind of very famous quote of Western history and philosophy. Yes, good. I think, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. That's Descartes' quote. In the original Latin, it's cogito ergo sum. Cogito from Latin means consciousness, and that's where the word cognition comes from, and cognitive. So cogito ergo means therefore, and sum means reality. So conscious, therefore exist. Since I think, therefore I am. And that's something that even the method of doubt cannot touch. So, you know, as much as anything else can be doubted, that you exist as a thinking mind cannot. And by the time the meditations is done, this is just the second chapter, but he takes a slow and steady path back to our everyday common sense. So sometimes I think people forget the real big picture of Descartes' meditations. Like an initial look at it as a student in philosophy, many students just kind of think, this is weird, you know, what's the guy saying? The world's a dream? That's just silly, so I don't really care. But he's not actually saying that. He just suggests this as a possibility to sort of force us to come up with a better argument as to how we really know. But by the time the meditations is done, he finally, you know, takes a big long circle back to common sense. Like the world we perceive basically is the things that we see. We can trust our five senses. We're not getting things grossly incorrect. But he doesn't want to just help himself to those thoughts. He wants to be able to, he thinks, like systematically prove it through argument. And that's why he takes, you know, 6 chapters of the book to do that. But by the second chapter, all he shows is that you know you exist because you have this mind that's thinking. And then he uses that as leverage to build up the rest. Later on in the class, we'll read his 6th meditation, the final chapter, and you'll see how he puts all these pieces together to eventually come to the conclusion that the 5 senses work and that the external world is pretty much the way we perceive it to be. So that's the end of our epistemology lectures, I guess. We'll still be talking about the material as we continue through the semester, but on Wednesday, we're going to now jump into the next term's topic, which is time. So there's a short article from Albert Einstein I would like you to read for the Wednesday lecture, and then we'll just get started on that. So, all right, guys, thanks a lot for your time and attention. Try to make sure to keep coming and focus throughout the remaining part of the semester. You know, sprint to the finish. Don't get tired because it's a marathon and not just a sprint. But okay, thanks, guys. I'll let you go then. I know we all have next classes to meet. So have a good one. Thank you again, and be in touch with me by email until Wednesday. So I'll see you guys then, okay? Let me know in the chat. Everything good? All right. Take care then. Bye-bye.